Stop the cap.
And I got to tell you something about voting Republican. And you need to listen and listen well. I'm a 27-year-old white man. The Republican Party has never, ever in my entire life done anything for me to make my life better, to make my life easier. Never. What are the kinds of issues that I'm facing? Home ownership is unaffordable. Has the Republican Congress done anything about that? Absolutely not. The job market is cooked. It's cooked because of H-1B visas. It's cooked because of high-skilled and low-skilled immigration. Has the GOP done anything about that? Absolutely not. They sent us to war in Iraq, Afghanistan. Now they want us to fight a war in Iran. This country's cooked because of feminism. Things like no-fault divorce have made marriage very unattractive. Do Republicans even talk about that? Absolutely not. College is unaffordable. Have the Republicans tried to wipe student loans or make college more affordable? Absolutely not. Name one thing that the Republican Party has ever done explicitly for young white men, for their direct and tangible benefit. They have done nothing.
Black men, I do not know what we're going to do in these trying times and you know, what's about to happen, what the future holds, you know, as it pertains to, you know, the racism in this country and the system of white supremacy, because it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And it's going to get worse primarily because the white elites, the white oligarchs are not sharing the wealth with the white proletariat. I've listened to my fair share of Legion of Men. He's not even a suspected white supremacist. He's just a flat out white supremacist. He likes to hide it with, you know, racial realism or intellectual racism. And then Nick Fuentes, right, who ironically recently, or at least I saw the clip recently, he said what I've been saying about, you know, the issue with, you know, what the white boomers and the white elites have not done for young white men. And I'm like, I don't know why they think they can get away with that. I'm like, young men of any society are the men that fight all your wars. They're the men that do all the fucking policing. Like, as a man, once you get past a certain age and past a certain point, you basically turn into a woman. You know, that's just the truth. You basically turn into the woman. You don't have the power that you think that you fucking have. You know, young white men with guns, and America has tons of guns, are a very, very, very dangerous population, as this weekend has shown us, right? With the white boy crash outs. Again, I'm nigga-damas. I predicted all this shit. I said that this shit was going to crash out. I'm like, hey, let me do the math. I'm like, okay, you're fucking with their money, so then that's going to fuck with their identity. White men have more entitlement than black men to the idea that, you know, they should be in such and such a position. I'm like, you take that away? I'm like, oh, no, white men can't handle that. They will crash the fuck out. Again, you're talking about the population of people who disproportionately go and, you know, they'll fucking, you know, delete the whole family. You know, you take power away from them motherfuckers will delete the whole family, wife and children, and burn the house down and shit. Like you fucking with the wrong ones when it comes to that shit. You know, they've been on that shit. And the white elites, you know, they get into this shit, you know, where they, you know, they're so high up on Mount Olympus, they don't touch grass. You know what I mean? They're on some let them eat cake, you know, type of shit. And I'm like, these white boys will run up in your shit and fuck your shit all the way up. Right? And then you got the billionaire class that simply believes, you know, well, we can always pay half the poor to kill the other half. And I'm like, you know, again, in a society, and this is why I think they're going to try to start curbing people's speech or, you know, popping people like how Charlie Kirk got popped, you know, because, of social media now. Now, you don't have to, put yourself out there. You just, basically broadcast from your own living room, right? That never existed before, right? You wanted to say something. This is the whole thing with the control of the media and why, we don't get an intellectual class when it comes to mainstream media for black voices. We get these, people who, they either have no credentials or they're entertainers. One of the things that Malcolm X called out, right? They stopped having those conversations with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and everything because they were talking real shit. They were talking about economics. They were talking about power, and the white people, they were arrogant. And they thought like, oh, we'll show these niggers with their tiny Negro brains. We'll go up there and we'll best them. And that didn't happen. You watch the debates with Malcolm X, he was gobbling up them white dudes. Same thing with Martin Luther King. You weren't going to get past them on some bullshit, right? They were dead serious about what they were trying to do and how they were trying to empower the black community. You see? And so, somewhere after the 1960s, I'd say after the 1970s with Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was probably the last one. Man, they stopped having those serious conversations. And then they started running around asking athletes and entertainers and, Latinas that ain't even from the black community. Oh, Cardi B, what you think? You know what I mean? They started asking people that are not well versed and don't know what they're talking about. I have yet to see a black entertainer say, hey, or athlete, hey, I'm not the one you need to be asking. You need to go and talk to Dr. Claude Anderson. I think it would be more appropriate for him to answer the question. Why are you asking me? I just play ball. Why are you asking me? I'm just an entertainer. I sing, I rap, I dance. That's what I do. Right? I have yet to see. They all get up there and they start smelling themselves and they start talking like as if, they know what the fuck they're talking about. Like they've done extensive research on the history. And they sound like anybody else, any other uninformed teenager that decides to hop on the internet and just start spewing their opinions with no life experience. So, they stopped doing that shit, because they were platforming it. This is one of the arguments I have with the left, when it comes to, their cancel culture and wanting to silence people. And I'm like, no, all they do is go in their echo chamber and then the shit gets worse and it gets darker and everything else. I want to know exactly what the fuck they're saying. Especially as a black American, and it's because you got to remember, you got two types of white supremacists. You got the ones that recognize the best tool of white supremacy is the denial of its existence. And then you got the other white supremacists that they want to spread the message of white supremacy. And those two groups are basic. They're not diametrically opposed, but they oppose the way that they go about, facilitating white supremacy. They go about it in two different ways. One wants to deny its existence and just gaslight everybody to death. And then the other one, even though they'll still do some gaslighting, they want to, they're like, why can't we say that we believe in social Darwinism and this is what we're doing and we fucked you up and that's what we did and fuck are you going to do about it, right? And then black people are sitting on the sideline. That's exactly what we knew. Thank you very much. I'm going to take that clip and, and use that as ammunition, right? Against the system of white supremacy. Oh, you done said it now. Like I said with Jared Taylor. What white people want to give up power? Oh, it's about maintaining power. Okay, well, then we don't need to have a conversation about meritocracy because it's not a meritocracy. At the end of the day, if your goal is to maintain power, then you're going to do everything in your power to maintain power. It has nothing to do with who gets the best grades or who's the best worker or who put in the most hours. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with behavior. Maintaining power is maintaining power. Power doesn't give a fuck about morality or righteousness or justice or codes of conduct. Maintaining power is about maintaining power by any means motherfucking necessary. I'm on the throne and you can't sit here and I will fight you to the death to make sure that you don't get up here. There is no avenue, there is no path to get up on the throne when somebody tells you that I want to maintain power. Again, going back to the book, The Iceman Inheritance, and what the author Michael Bradley talked about when he spoke on what the hell's it called? When he spoke on, the Cronus complex, which is essentially what white people have. And, you talk about, them growing up in the northern hemisphere and the cold winters and limited resources. And, again, as Karen Straughans said, girl writes what? The harsher the environment, the harsher the patriarchy. That's what it tends to be. And you see this in places like Saudi Arabia with, strict Islam and covering the women up. And again, harsher the environment, harsher the patriarchy, because the patriarchy is directly tied to your survival. Right. So, getting back to what I was saying about, what the oligarchs, because they're still not used to this whole thing with social media. They're only starting, to get into it, but they're not used to it. Like how powerful, social media is, and how young people, they don't listen to mainstream media. They don't listen to MSNBC and CNN and Fox News like that. They'll entertain it. They'll listen to it. But, I think many young people, myself included, or younger, I say relatively younger people, they've seen how people gloss, how the powers that be just gloss over like the real issues, the heart of the issues. And they put out these narratives that they want to be, put out there. I saw this with, especially being a black man and supporting the Second Amendment, when it came to this, CNN, when they had that general come up there and he was like, now I'm about to go fully semi-automatic. Like, what the fuck? Fully semi-automatic? Like, intentionally trying to conflate, like all that was approved. And I'm like, okay, so if you lying to me about that, what else are you lying to me about? Right? You can't, like, they don't get the fact that, like, especially now with, again, access to information, everybody's pretty much got a cell phone. Then you have AI. Before you had, Google or whatever, and you can research the shit in real time. They act like the model that they have of the 1950s, where they just say anything and Walter Cronkite like gets up there and says something and then everybody like believes them and goes ooh and ah, like the boomers. Like the boomers believe any fucking thing that they see on mainstream television. Younger people don't operate like that. They're way more critical of what they're hearing. And primarily, I think it comes from the fact that, like, the society has failed to benefit them. They talk this shit and, people don't see any change. They don't see any difference in what's going on. And eventually they lose faith in, those voices. The boomers think that they can gaslight people forever. That's what they think. And younger people are like, fuck are you talking about? And see, or fuck what you're talking about, not fuck who, anyway, you get what I'm saying, right? Fuck what you're talking about. And like I said, like you can't hold young people like they cannot be held, because especially in a society that does not benefit them. Motherfuckers get so greedy that they always ignore, the rank and file. And I'm like, man, you need to pay attention to the rank and file and their sentiments and how they feel, because they will tear this bitch up. Again, the older whites, they're too old. They're going to go out there and fight. Remember that white couple during Black Lives Matter that was like outside the house, and they had he had his, like, I don't know if it was AR-15 or shotgun. He had some gun, and then his wife had like some nickel plated tiny pistol. I don't even know what she had. It was like one of them cheap ass guns, them Saturday night special guns from the 60s, like a Lorson or a Cobra or my favorite, the Jimenez, one of them little 25 ACP pistols. I don't know what the fuck she had. I just remember that shit was like some nickel plated shit, and she waving it, pointing it to the crowd. That's y'all motherfuckers, man. That's y'all. All y'all, I say 55 and up group. That's y'all, with the pot bellies and shit like that. I'm like, you think you gonna go up against these highly pissed off young white men? They will fucking air this bitch out. I mean, that's a fact. They're currently doing it, right? But anyway, I'm kind of getting off topic. I just needed to, preface all this, with the realities of this sort of disconnect, right? So the idea is not to platform these people, right? So then they go off and then they go and create their more, extreme platform where they get to go and say whatever the fuck they want to say, right? And again, I don't agree with the left on cancel culture because not only does it make the person a martyr and it makes them look like they're a victim and they're like, in other words, what is their ideology or what is their belief system looks like it's more truth because of how hard you're trying to suppress it. You make it look like truth because of how hard you're trying to suppress it, as opposed to just debating and challenging it directly and exposing it and just being able to go back and forth about it. If your position is so strong, even if they're using intellectually dishonest tools and whatnot with their rhetoric, you should be able to immediately smack that down. If you can't debate from the angle of, okay, fuck it, let's go with that. And then you get them to, you go say, fuck it, let's go with that. Let's go with your idea and run it out to infinity and where it goes. I guarantee you, see, if you were able to debate like that, then you'd be able to punch holes in all their shit. You'd be able to punch holes right in it. It's like a primary example, like the shit with the gender war and how women, constantly are hypergamous. They want to date up. And then the women are like, oh, we're feminists. We want to make $100,000 and we still want to date up. And I'm like, okay, so you make 100,000 and he's supposed to make what, 200,000? And then, yes. And then once he makes 200,000, then you complain that it's not equality anymore. And then you argue that women need to go from 100,000 to making 200,000. And then once you make 200,000, then you're claiming that he needs to make 300,000 in order to be a viable candidate in order for you to date. Right. And then that just keeps on going on into infinity. I'm like, it doesn't work like that. Right. And you expose that. Right. Instead of just hanging out in the dusty conversations. You're like, where does this end? Where does this end? Like you want equality, but then at the same time, you want to date hypergamy. Hypergamous equality does not exist. It does not exist. You cannot have a man that you look up to and respect and everything else, and you're constantly, nipping at his heels, competing with him. I'm not saying that the man should be stagnant, but I'm saying you can't just, do that into perpetuity. There is a fucking ceiling to the shit. You can't say I want to date the best man ever and then I give you Jesus and then 6 months later you're not satisfied with Jesus and then you come back bitching about how you want to date God. Right? Like it doesn't work like that, right? So, again, that whole not being satisfied. But you got to be able to expose that by running the shit all the way out to infinity. Right? So, the cancel culture shit I don't fucking agree with, right? But anyway, getting into the heart and the meat of this conversation with the Nick Fuentes and the Legion of Men, types. So they have the continued problem of, I think Nick is a little bit better, but Nick is not consistent. He's not consistent in his in a lot of his rhetoric, and I think it's because he's only 26 years old and he's still learning. I can argue, he's good at his some of his processing, but again, he's still a bigot, he's still a racist, he's still a white supremacist, he's still, a neo-Nazi, all that shit, right? But I can see with Nick that the wheels are turning, okay? When it comes to Legion of Men, I'm like, Legion of Men is like, what is he, like 36, something like that? Like, nigga, you should know better. You know what I'm saying? But like Legion of Men is like a pseudo intellectual to me. Like he doesn't the leaps in logic that he takes and the lack of self-reflective, thinking, because he has to I don't know. It's like he's trying to stay on his path of white supremacy. He was giving his one of his recent videos. He's up there talking about black fatigue. I'm like, he's still over here talking about black people. Still, what about Chicago using the Andrew Tate? Because Andrew Tate now, he's grifting towards the white people. Same thing with the Hodge twins, right? Just throwing black people underneath the bus. Again, black community. This is why we want to reorganize the race. This is why, when it comes to, a lot of the biracials, and I got to look at you black men who are out here and you want to get with Becky so bad. Yeah, this is the problem. This is the problem. In particularly, now some people argue it's the whole white mom, black mom, situation. But I'm saying, Andrew Tate was largely raised by his white mother. His dad was like in and out and whatnot, not really, and then, died prematurely and all that. So he's not getting the black male, perspective. Plus growing up in England, sorry, you people from the UK, but some of y'all don't get it. Right. So it's like to watch Andrew Tate coon out, it's not surprising. It doesn't surprise me. Like when you got a biracial man saying my white daughters, like I'm like, nigga, bye. Like it's not even. I don't even have to dive too deep into that. But anyway, Legion of Men was talking about. It was just Nazi shit. It was like, we should have it. Literally, Starship Troopers. That in order to be a citizen, you have to, basically like serve in the military or some sort of conscription, for the society. And then you get your citizenship. And then you also have to subscribe to, Judeo-Christian European, culture. And then he goes into talking about how European culture is clearly it's the superior culture. Like it always kills me how white people skip over their savagery, right? And they always want to talk about Jesus and Christianity and all that. And this is the difference between how white people view Christianity versus how black people view Christianity. White people view Christianity as Christianity is specifically for them and that they're supposed to rule the world and bring forth the light of Christ or some bull. It's real twisted because the only fucking Europeans in the Bible, right? You got like Paul who talks about going to Spain. You got like fucking so he knew about like that whole area, right? The Iberian Peninsula. Then you got freaking the Romans who were enemies to Jesus, right? And then you got freaking some Greek, right? Like in like I don't know Corinthians or some shit like that. But seriously speaking, white people, by and large, other than being the enemies of Jesus, are not in the fucking Bible. So the way that white people run around thinking that they're the torchbearers of Christianity, there's black people in the Bible. There's more black people in the Bible than actual white people in the Bible. That's what's crazy. Again, the Romans, enemies of Jesus, right? But then y'all gonna put all that on the Jews. Even though the Romans are the ones that crucified it, but y'all gonna put it on, it's Judas, and he's a Jew, and that's what the problem. Wasn't Jesus a Jew? And then then again you got the whole problem with that shit, and there's a divide in the white community. You got the we was Vikings white guys that are over there, they're subscribing to paganism. I actually have a slightly greater respect for them, because at least they're trying to find something that's exclusively white and not tainted with the minorities, right? So, they want to go up and be on some Viking shit, but then they get mad when I point out that the Vikings, many of them were probably Muslim because they, again, were trading with the freaking, the Arab, freaking, the what do you call it? I don't say the caliphates because that didn't come until that did come because they were in like the 900s. The Arabs came, Islam came out in the 7th century. Yeah, so they were over there walking their asses all the way down to Constantinople, trading in white slaves that they stole from the fucking Balkans and shit, the Slavs and whatnot, which is why they found that big ass pink ring over there in, I think it was like Sweden or somewhere. They found some ring that had Allah, inscripted on it. Google it, you'll find it. See, they don't want to talk about that white on white slave trade. They want to paint this fantasy that, again, ancient Europe was, Rivendell and Lord of the Rings and it was this white racial utopia. It's just simply not the case, not the reality. Again, Europe was the backwater. Northern Europe was the slums. Okay, again, go back and look at what the Greeks and the Romans had to say about, the white people to the north, and the tribes and how violent they were and barbaric they were. That's the barbarian territories. They were the barbarians. But yet now somehow those white people, in particularly the blonde-haired, blue-eyed white women, like based off of, Aryan white supremacy with the Hitler and all that shit, who wasn't even freaking, blonde hair, blue eye himself, and I believe had a Jewish grandmother. They painted that idea, and that resonates. That resonates with white men. This whole Norse mythology, Viking, pure white Hyperborea, race of white people that resonates with them, and they run around with it, speaking about some sort of collective white culture when that's never existed. White people were slaughtering the hell out of each other in Europe for centuries, which is why, they were the greatest savages this planet has ever known once they decided to stop fighting and then left Europe and went to other regions of the world, which again, goes to my point about, when freaking Legion of Men or any of these other white supremacists run around and they say, oh, Europe has the greatest culture, and then just skip over their savagery. Right. Then when you point that shit out, then they want to throw up social Darwinism. And it's always funny to me because in one breath, they'll throw up social Darwinism and survival of the fittest. And if we won, we won. And then turn right around and then start talking about, the buttery goodness of Jesus and Christianity and Christ and moral this and morality that and whatnot. And then, again, I give slightly more respect to some of these white supremacists that actually admit that they don't have a universal compassion. They don't have universal empathy. It's narrowly and exclusively, what do you want to call it? Narrowly and exclusively equates to themselves, right? And no one else, right? See, I like my white supremacists honest. I can fuck with an honest white supremacists. I hate these bitch ass white supremacists that run around and gag, oh, this is not what we're doing. It's exactly what they're doing. Oh, that's not what we're doing. Now, some people might consider that clever. Yeah, I'm like, okay, call it clever. It's still cowardice. It's still cowardice. You're still not standing 10 toes down on how the fuck you really feel and what you really trying to do. Right? So anyway, getting back to Legion of Men, he was talking about this whole, basically Starship Troopers America, where in order to be a U.S. citizen, you have to, contribute to the society and basically go through these channels and filters to determine how much you subscribe to their belief system and their way of life as the dominant white culture. Right. And the thing is like I said before, that the main problem with white supremacy is white people want to position themselves in a dominant position, and they use violence in order to do it. But then they want people to not see them as the violent savages that they are. They want people to believe that they just got to where they got to, just through pure benevolence and studying physics at some university. I'm like, that's not how you got there. First off, you wouldn't even be able to go you'd be in the fields of the serfs of Europe. You wouldn't even be able to go to the fucking universities if the free labor or the forced labor that you got from the Africans or the Indians or the exploitation of resources that you vacuumed up into Europe freed you up to be able to do what you do. That's the only reason why Europe has developed, because it stole the wealth, it stole the life force, from the rest of the planet. That's why white people are on top. It's not because of their own ingenuity and their own, skill set, and they just put their minds. That's bullshit. If that were the case, then Europe would have been like Wakanda in the Black Panther, and they would have been an isolated, group of people. They would have never left Europe in 1492. They would have stayed there, walled off that bitch, and then been there with the Valkyries and their life force crystals and shit, and had fucking cities that look like Asgard from freaking Ragnarok or something like that. That's what it would look like, but that's not what it is. They went out and they stole stuff and they brought it back to Europe. That's what they did, and that's not a very Christian thing to do, right? So they have this bullshit ass, freaking. What do you want to call it? Like this is a paradox, with social Darwinism and Christianity, where they're trying to find a way to justify what they consider social Darwinism and but then talk all this light of Christ bullshit. Again, that's why I don't subscribe to the fucking Christianity, especially Christianity in the way that most black people received it through the transatlantic slave trade. I'm like, you all are mad. You all are out of your fucking minds. These people are a bunch. You're taking God from the most ungodly people on the planet. Like, that's nuts. And then again, people who are the last group of people to actually become a people. When black people are 300,000 years old, you got hieroglyphs. They got the word for the hieroglyph for the word face is a black African face. You know what I mean? We're the oldest group of people, and so we just existed for hundreds of thousands of years, multiple millennia, and you're gonna act like you never had a personal relationship with God until the white man showed up on the shores with his religion that is a fucking patchwork quilt of multiple stories and religions that came before, and many of which came out of Africa, and then give it to you, and then that's going to be your moral compass. The most savage people on the planet are going to be your moral compass for how to act, behave, and think in this world. This shit is nuts. I mean, it's nuts. You know what I mean? It's like a fucking drug dealer trying to argue about how you need to clean yourself up or something like that. Like, it's just nuts. Like, aren't you the one selling the drugs, motherfucker? Aren't you the one got me on fentanyl? It's like, motherfucker this OD'd on fucking fentanyl and then stands over you with your blue face talking about breathe. like this shit is fucking psychotic, but y'all just sit there and entertain it with your self-hatred and inferiority complex about being black. Like, just, this shit is nuts. Bonkers. Free your motherfucking mind, nigga. Get out of the goddamn white supremacist matrix. So, like, when it comes to, and I'll get to Nick Fuentes in a second, but when it comes to, the both of them, obviously, what they really want is they want white privilege. I mean, we can say that that's what white supremacy is, but that's what they want. They want to go back to a time where white men had what they had in the 1950s. Like, I was looking at this shit in the Catskill Mountains. They had some resort. I posted on the community tab, and they were talking about the resort closing, and I see the pictures in it. Every time I see these type of pictures, every time I see them Back to the Future, type of pictures with white people, and they're all suited and booted, and the white girls, the white women, they got those pink dresses on with the white frill shit like right underneath it, and then they got like the freaking the white socks on their ankles. I know white guys just sit there and they lament. They're like, oh my God, we got to go back to such a time. Oh my God, we got to go back to, yes, and that was it is. Because, right, it was like the system of white supremacy, right, 1950s America, right? And they're like, why can't we go back to this? Where young white men came back from World War II and they were able to buy houses and there was just constant growth. And that's another thing that they miss. Right, this whole thing of the Make America Great Again, to go back to what era? If you think when somebody says Make America Great Again, what period of time do you think that they're talking about? They're talking about between 1945 and probably 1972 or 73. That's what they're talking about. That's Make America Great Again, where everything was manufactured in America, jobs were abound, right? But all of that was a byproduct of a post-World War II economy because America won World War II, right? I mean, you could argue that the Americans, they fought for that, the silent generation. I mean, these guys went off and they were getting cut down by MG-42 Nazi machine gun fire and shit like that, right? Like that movie Fury with Brad Pitt, right? That shit was fucked up, right? They came back and the government set up, like, hey, well, we got, and you gotta admit, like, the white men of the past, they definitely, the people who were in the government, the people who were in leadership definitely had more of the maintaining white supremacy than the white people do now. More now, it's just greed. Greed is just completely taken over. Because those soldiers came back from World War. Imagine that. You got a bunch of young men, they fought the war, they come back, and you're not even going to house them? You're not even going to get them that 30-year mortgage and whatnot, right? And get them to, that's a reasonable price so they can start a family. I mean, you got to think about like the way that, it was a baby boom. You got to think about how secure you feel as a man to where you just go and pop out 4 kids. You know what I'm saying? You got to really think about like your vision for the future, or how successful or well you're going to do, how bright your shit is to sit there and pop out 4 kids to, that you comfortably feel that you can support, right? You go into work, you got full medical and dental, you got pensions, you got this. And don't get me wrong. I mean, the friggin' fighting for those type of wages and jobs. I mean, that's always been a continuous battle, right? But like, that period of time in American history, there was a blip. Prior to that, again, you had slaves doing everything, right? And imagine being a white man, I've said this before, in 1850 looking for a job. Nope, sorry, I got slaves for that. I don't think I need you to work. I got me a black slave blacksmith, right? I got me a black slave carpenter. Nope, sorry, don't need you for that either. Nope, that's okay. But what you can be, I got a job for you. What you can be is an overseer. And just in case these niggas get out of line, I'll give you an honorary badge and a whip, and you just stand out there in them hot ass fields and just watch these slaves all day like the Pakal brothers. Yeah, do that for me, and you got a job, right? Because again, if they got slaves doing everything, there's no difference. Let me make this abundantly clear, and I've said this before. There is no difference between slaves and the robots that they want to replace everybody with. There's no difference, because that allows for maximum extraction when it comes to the white elites, because it's low maintenance, it's high return on investment, right? So then, you got the immigrants, they come from Europe, right? Because again, Europe, the white people were dusty in Europe. They were all dusty. That's why they got on boats and left the country. You got to think about how bad it is to do that whole fucking Fievel journey, right? Y'all remember Fievel with the mouse and everything, the little Jewish mouses? They were Jewish, by the way. But anyway, the whole Fievel and getting on the boat and going across the Atlantic, right? Like how long is the transatlantic travel? Maybe by steamboat is a couple of weeks or something like that. But you got a suitcase, you got your whole shit, and you come to Ellis Island or New York, and then you get stuffed into like, a tight ass apartment. You gotta think how fucked up it had to be in Europe. This is why all this shit, in Europe was just so beautiful and the angels were singing. It's bullshit. Europe was crowded and dusty. And there were monarchies, and you had no fucking rights and shit like that. That's what you all need to recognize is beautiful European culture. Beautiful European culture is kings, queens, nobles, and peasants, and the vast majority of you came from fucking peasants. The way that they romanticize history is just bonkers. It's insane. You know what I'm saying? Like, they really are on some we was Vikings and shit. We was, the fucking, we was the citizens of Asgard. Like, wrong. No, you were not. You were not the citizens of Asgard. You were not the citizens of Azeroth. None of that shit. You were dusty ass fucking peasants and shit, living in a shitty ass log cabin in fucking, Russian tundra and shit. That's what you are. With your fucking, your wife's mother out there, picking up firewood and shit, like the little babushka that she was. You know what I mean? But anyway, so they came to America, and what was I going to say? Hold on a second. Oh yeah, the Gilded Age. Yeah. So these white people, they came through Ellis Island or some other entry point, New Orleans or something like that, and they worked in the shittiest industries. There were no rights when white people came to this country. Again, y'all had to fight for the shit, right? You had to fight for full medical dental. You had to fight for paid holiday, 40-hour work weeks, child labor laws. You had to fight for that. These white fat cats, these white elites, they ain't never giving a fuck about you. You know what I mean? They would have your children running through in between machines, getting their fucking little fingers cut off, right? I mean, didn't they have that thing? It was like, where was it at? It was like in New York or something. Where was that shit? Where, let me see. What was the biggest textile factory fire in the U.S.? You know what I'm saying? Like, they had no safety regulations. And it wasn't like they had fire extinguishers or anything. Probably wasn't invented back then. Yeah, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in 1911, New York, is often cited as the deadliest garment textile factory fire in U.S. history. 146 people killed and one of the most infamous industrial disasters. So, what came out of this? Hold on. What came out of this? Regulations. Let's see real quick. Shock the nation. Factory Investigation Commission. Fire safety standards. Mandatory unlocked. Opening exit. So this is where they put up the exit signs for how to get out of the building. Damn, they didn't even know how to get out of the building. Imagine if that was your first day of work and shit like that. You in this factory, you don't even know how to get the fuck out of the bitch. Requirement for multiple factory exits. So there's probably imagine how that building was designed prior to regulation. Fire drills in large workplaces. So they never had fire drills. Installation of automatic sprinklers. Didn't have automatic sprinklers before. Standards for fire alarms, extinguishers. Maximum occupancy. Improved ventilation and sanitation. Limits the hours for working hours for women and children, right? Women and children. Yeah, see, yeah, that hits you. It hits you when your women and children are getting burned up in a fucking fire because a handful of white elite guys are so fucking greedy that they'll just, get you to, get your women and children to basically slave away. To the point that, and not have anything else going on, for any sort of safety concerns or quality of life concerns. And that's the funny thing. That's the funny thing about like white people. They don't do shit until they're forced to, until there's so much fucking bloody outcry that demands are made. That's why in my opinion, I'm like, revolution is coming, man. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Now there's those that want to facilitate a civil war, right? And that gets like the average person to fight their neighbor and shit like that. But a revolution is vertical. It's not horizontal. It's a vertical conflict. It's a conflict from the proletariat up to the elites, you see. And again, America is ripe. It's ripe for it. It's 100% ripe for a revolution, not a civil war, but again, this is the whole problem with the white supremacists and the way that they misdiagnosed the problem. Again, Nick Fuentes has his little clip where he literally says what I said. He's like, what have the Republicans done for young white men? What have they done for young white men? Nothing. And they're not going to with the rhetoric. See, again, white men, they want special privileges. They're like, my grandfather and great grandfather got special privileges when it comes to being white. So therefore I should get these special privileges. They're not trying to dismantle the system. They want white male privilege. That's what they want. They're not trying to make it a better world, for everybody else. And I know that this is a space that men, men struggle with, and women or feminists will be quick to point it out. But then, in response, I got to point out to women, like, y'all still want men to do the lion's share of the fucking backbreaking work. So there's got to be some type of privilege in there for men. There's got to be some type of recognition. And I hate when people try to run with that. Like, it's like they'll try to run with the argument about dismantling white supremacists, therefore equates to the argument about dismantling patriarchy, right? And then it's like, okay, well, if you dismantle capitalism, then wouldn't you be dismantling patriarchy as well? And see, this is a conversation that even women are not ready for. because, and it changes the whole dating market, which is one of the things that white men most certainly feel threatened by. I got a video coming talking about white male insecurity. The way that they're crashing online. I've already proven them. There's more white men married to Asian women than black men married to white women. Black men don't even make a drop in the bucket. But the thing is that white men have always felt sexually inferior and physically inferior, to black men. We are seen as a threat, which is why they always talk about us and we live rent free in their mouth. They're not worried about some little Asian guy taking their bitch. They're not worried about some little Hispanic guy taking their bitch. They're not worried about that shit. They're worried about your big black ass. That's what they're worried about. And we could argue that that's been stoked by, historical, fears that have been ginned up via propaganda and Birth of a Nation and all that other type of shit. But the fear is real. Now, Shay Sade put out a video. I posted the guy's link to that video where he talks about, the black male masculinity and how white men have to basically cripple black men's social status in order to, make sure that we don't have access to, white women. I don't know what's going on with white women and white men in the bedroom or what conversations are being had or, we see a little snippets of what white women say when they're out on the street and Brad's nowhere around. We see little snippets of that. I think white men know that there's a lot of white women who are generally attracted to black men. But I also think that that's grossly over exaggerated. I think majority of white women are attracted to and want white men. I think that's a proven fact. But so then it's like, well, why are you so insecure about the microscopic amount of black men that are out here getting with white women? I'm saying by the numbers. I know social media makes it seem like it's way worse than that, but why are you so insecure about that? But then again, I had to think about, the realities. It's just kind of like the way that, example, you had these white guys crashing out, shooting up the place. You don't hear nothing about any white fatigue. Nobody's talking about white fatigue and, the problem is these white boys and the calls are coming from inside the house, right? You don't see the same type of energy that we saw with DeCarlos Brown, which was the schizophrenic black guy that stabbed the woman on the train, right? Whenever it's coming from an outside force, they got all the smoke in the world. The blacks, they're coming to get us. They're killing us all over the place. Right? But whenever it's white on white violence, they don't have any smoke. They don't have anything to say. White people say the same thing about black people. How come you only care about when a black cop kills a white cop kills a black man, but you don't got nothing to say about Chicago? Because we recognize that Chicago is interpersonal beef. It's unfortunate that what happens in Chicago, but we also recognize that comes from the system of white supremacy and the situation that economically depriving black men has put them in and the whole facilitation of a narco economy and whatnot. We understand that there's going to be violence in that situation where, black men are economically deprived. But the main thing is the police officer is the enforcement arm of the state. They're the enforcement arm of the state. And when the state basically kills you with impunity, that's a little different than when you get one black man killing another black man. And if the cops catch him, one of them is going to go to jail and they're going to be prosecuted and they're going to be charged and they're going to be punished. So there's some sense of justice. But when the state kills you, when a police officer kills you, that's completely different because there's no recourse of action if the state gets away with it. Right. So, again, that's another false equivalence argument that they try to make. But when it comes to white people specifically, when a black person kills a white person, they lose their shit. But when white people kill each other, they start making all type of excuses. Even with the guy shooting the church up over there in Michigan, you know what the white people are running around saying? They're like, oh my God, this is violence against Christians. I'm like, no, this is white on white violence. Imagine if a black Muslim killed a black Christian. Do you honestly think that the white community is going to be like, this was an attack on Christians? You know what I'm saying? Do you honestly think that they're going to say that? Fuck no, they ain't going to say. They're going to be like, they're going to yawn and they're going to say black on black violence. Next. They're not going to fucking dissect that shit. And that's another thing. They like I said this, and I gotta give Neferkari said it because he's been beating the drum about it. But I said this as well in one of the previous videos that I did. Yeah, they always want to break themselves up into groups when it comes to their own internal fuckery. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's the fucking, it's the Boston Celtics, versus, some other team or some shit like that. They always want to break themselves up into these different fucking categories and whatnot. It's never just, it's white on white violence. This is white people killing other white people. Because again, I forget what the number is. I want to say it's like 84 to 89% of white people kill other white people. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it is. Right? Which, again, I hate the whole percentage thing because it doesn't tell you how many people are killed. This is the whole problem with percentages. Because people hear that number like, oh my God, 84. Oh, that's almost 100%. 100% of what? Almost 100% of what? If I said it was only 5 people, would that be an epidemic? No. But if I said it was 1,000 people, would that be an epidemic in the grand scheme of the white population? No. If I said it was 20,000 people a year, would that be an epidemic? You could argue that, but it's still an astronomically small number, less than 1% of the population, if you look at the overall white population. But see, it's way more dramatic to sit there and say, 84% or 89%. It's way more dramatic to say that. This is why I hate percentages, and percentages are the number one thing weaponized by the elites to manipulate the masses. Because most Americans, because they go through this shitty educational system, they can't do fucking basic math. They can't do math. 50, the 1350. First off, number one, it's arrest, it's not convictions. And then secondly, what is your total number of arrest? What is the total number of arrest? Like, does anybody even know what that number is? Because it's 50% of the total number of arrest. And that number may be 100,000 arrests. How many arrests do you think are made in a year in America? Hold on, let me see. How many arrests are made in a year in America? Just arrest. Let's see what this number is. Maybe it's 1 million. So, actually, it's way higher than that. It's 10 million. So there's 10 million arrests recorded. And the thing is like that can be any, was it more recent? Suggest about 7.6 million arrests in 2020. I mean, that's everything. That's fucking DUIs. That's fucking, freaking, what do you call it? Fucking check fraud. That's, what else could you, disorderly conduct? I mean, there's not even like real crime shit. That's not even like, some of this stuff is just like bullshit misdemeanors and whatnot. So like, asking, how many murders are there a year in America? I think there's more people dying of fentanyl than actual murders. Pretty sure of that. Yeah, 20,000 to 25,000 murders or non-negligent manslaughter. What is this? Was that non-negligent manslaughters annually. So in 2023, there were about 22,830 homicides in America. You see, and then keep in mind that you have 330 million people in this country. So take, what is this? 22.8. So 22,000, let's go. 22,830 divided by 330 million. And that's 0.0000691. So that's nothing. Times that by 100, move the decimal place over 2 spaces. It's nothing. You're significantly less than 1%. But yet, oh my God, America is the most violent place in the world. Oh my God, there's so much violent place in the world. Relative to what? relative to other countries that also have a death rate that's only less than 1% of their fucking population. Like, come on, get real. This is why all this shit is bullshit. And then you get these freaking white nationalists, white supremacists running around screaming about, oh my God, clutch your pearls and everything else like that. Like as though like we're in the middle of Gaza. And I'm like, no, that's not what's going on. So you get these people, they get all caught up on all this propaganda, screaming about women too. Black women are killed every 5.5 hours. Oh my God. Just screaming and shit. I'm like, did you actually break down the actual fucking numbers? And mind you, it's that 5.5 hours, that was just COVID, because, there were a lot of domestic violence situations during COVID because you had people locked inside, with each other. I mean, the number of violent, or murders, that happened during COVID. I mean, in the black community, that shit spiked up to like 50, what was it? I think it was like 1,500, but on average, it's like 300. That's on average, so COVID was an anomaly, but they took that shit and ran around every 5.5 hours. Oh my God, these black men are killing us. Oh my God, it's just nonsense. But anyway, I'm saying, so, getting back to the whole, Nick Fuentes thing and the white supremacist angle, the other thing that they throw up is, so if it's not black fatigue, right, bringing up black crime and all this other bullshit, then it's the Jews. Now, I'm going to say the Jews have kind of played their hand recently with the whole Gaza and the way that we see, like this, all the stuff that Anna Kasparian has brought up, just the way that all these politicians, the AIPAC, the way that they bend over backwards. Clearly the American people, and particularly young Americans, they don't care for Palestinians getting killed, in America's name. That shit does not sit well with them. People, it's like, yo, and then you combine that, with the fact that, Americans, young Americans, money's all fucked up. I mean, it's a fucked up reality that if Americans were doing well, they probably would care about Gaza less. But because young Americans are doing so poorly, in the grand scheme of the history of this country, like, so they're looking at that shit like, yo, you're sending, you don't want to wipe student loan debt, but yet you're sending bombs to Israel to be used to bomb Palestinians that cost more than my entire college education. You know what I'm saying? Like the operation of that, the money going over there, the pilot who's getting paid to fly the multi-million-dollar jet to drop bombs on fucking children costs more than my entire education. But it's more important for you to bomb children than it is for you to, wipe people's student loan debt, right? When in other countries like I think Norway and Sweden and other places, college is free, right? And again, if you go and you read that, I think it was like a letter from the Trilateral Commission that I think Ronald Reagan read or went to Ronald Reagan. It talks about the excess of democracy. Go look that up. And what they were worried about is where they were worried about having an educated proletariat. And this is where you had Ronald Reagan change the rules and privatize education and make people take out massive amounts of student loan debt, which caused the universities to, because it was, guaranteed. Anytime the government guarantees anything, the private sector always finds ways of maximizing profits. You know what I mean? And they just make it more and more costly. The government doesn't pay attention. And the next thing you know, you got this over bloated, situation like with college being, $20,000 a fucking semester. The average 4-year institution in this country is $20,000, $22,000 a semester. Right? Where what were the boomers paying when they went to college? What, like $5? You know what I mean? To get their degree. And then think about the return on investment of that, right? You went and you paid $5,000. You maybe paid $20,000 for your law degree. And then over the course of the next 40 years, you're this lawyer and you're making, freaking, 5 times that. You know what I'm saying? Like just let that sink in. Meanwhile, you got people who have these kick-ass degrees, more training, more information, more knowledge, right? Because, as technology advances, right, you got to know more shit. Imagine, I always used to say that when I used to watch Star Trek as a kid, like imagine all the shit that like Jodie LaForge had to know. Right, so you got to know all human history. You got to know, the old physics, the new physics. You know what I mean? You got to know quantum mechanics. You got to know, whatever, nuclear fusion. You got to know how to bend space time and all this other shit with your warp drive. You got to know all that shit, and all that shit's got to be in your fucking head. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they didn't really show a whole bunch of AI. You had data. I mean, he was an AI, but they made him like an actual person as opposed to like just like speaking to. Well, no, they spoke to the computer. You know what I mean? But the computer kind of gave real short answers. It didn't give real long explanations, unless I guess they went on the holodeck. I think they had a couple scenes where the AI was like teaching them something on the holodeck. They could just ask the question, so maybe they don't have to retain it all in their head. But still, I'm saying people today have more knowledge and more information than the generations that came before us because we've been plugged in the whole time. We're literally plugged in the matrix 24/7. You want to complain about, people dick around on their phones, but then there's other people that don't dick around on their phones and they're always trying to gather information. They have more information about world history and American history than any boomer could ever possibly fathom. Because all they do is sit around and consume information. And they sit there and they ask a question. And then they go and they ask, okay, AI, why? Why? Give me the sources. Provide the sources. Okay, then go look at the sources. Come back. Okay, why? Why ChatGPT? Why did this happen? What were the motivations? Why did this happen? Okay, I heard this rumor. Is this true? Confirm this. Is this true? Well, not really. Okay, well then what were the real reasons? I mean, man, you go down the fucking rabbit hole. It's insane. This is one of the things that really pisses me off about fucking these white people, these white nationalists and white supremacists and shit, because it is white supremacy, because the information is available and you don't go and look it up. You want to sit there and talk about racial realism. But again, like I said, white people, they always start the movie at the end. They don't start the movie at the beginning. No, actually look at the history of what white people did, the policies that they put in place in order to, undermine and oppress black people in America. And you'll understand why you got to deal with niggas. You'll understand why you got quote unquote black fatigue. Black people, y'all need to do this. See, it's either the Ooga Booga black people were in Africa and they have tiny Negro brains and they can't do anything. And when we came to Africa, they had nothing. They didn't have civilization, right? And they don't tell them about the Moors. They don't know anything about the Moors. They don't know anything about, the freaking Moors, running the Iberian Peninsula for centuries or whatever. They don't know anything about the knowledge that was brought into Europe after the fall of Rome. They don't understand or know about black people being respected they have no clue about any of this shit. Their history starts at slavery, Ooga Booga. They captured a bunch of ignorant black people off the western coast of Africa, brought them to the Americas, and made them slaves. And there were a couple slave revolts because black people are inherently violent, and we should have kept them slaves because look at them now. Like, you see the leap in logic? Like, this shit cracks me up. This is how they fucking think, And it's like, okay, so you're just gonna ignore, they'll be like, and then they'll come with like the boomer talk. Oh, you black people, you need to pull yourselves up by the bootstraps, and you need to go off and build your own community instead of mooching off of white people. Black people did, and you burn us out. We had Tulsa, Oklahoma, you burn us out. We had Rosewood and you burn us out. We had Slocum, Texas, and you burn us out. We had Elaine, Arkansas, and you burn us out. We had Ocoee, Florida, and you burn us out. We had Wilmington, North Carolina, and you burn us out. We had Chicago in 1990, and you burn us out. We had Omaha, Nebraska, and you burn us out. We had East St. Louis, and you burn us out. We had Springfield, Illinois, in 1903, and you burn us out. We had Corbin, Kentucky, and you burn us out. We had Oscarville, and you burn us out. You know what I'm saying? Like, every time black people put some shit together, white people burn us out. And then you sit there and talk about, oh, you black people, y'all ain't never put anything together. That's why the black community looks the way that it does today. That's why I don't bat an eyelashes. I don't give a flying fuck when a white person has a 16-year-old that puts a motherfucking Glock in their face and tells them to get the fuck out of the car. I don't even bat an eye. You ain't never gonna hear me sit there and be like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You ain't never gonna hear me. I'm not gonna advocate for it. I'm not gonna co-sign it, but you ain't never gonna sit because I understand the true origins of that shit. I know that shit doesn't come out of the void. I'm like, no, you want to marginalize, you want to fucking oppress, you want to make sure that black men don't have access to money. You know what I mean? Again, like my man told me, and I gotta agree with him. He talking about, man, every time chance he gets, he's fucking a white woman. If a white woman even looks in his direction and bats her eyelashes, he's like, that bitch is going to get fucked, and I am going to fuck her silly because he knows that white men feel some type of way about that. And his attitude is, yeah, I prefer black women and want to be with black women. But guess what? Since they done fucked up our money as black men so that we can't be patriarchs and take care of our own, I'm going to fuck up all type of interpersonal relationship with white men and white women every motherfucking chance I get. That's his payback because, that's what he feels, that he can do. He wants that white woman comparing the fucking BBC, the fucking hitting her cervix to the way that the white dude is fucking her. Oh, darling, let's make sweet love and shit like that. He got that bitch over there squealing. Yeah, oh yeah. And I totally get it. I can understand why black women would be mad about that, but I totally get the nuances of why he's doing what the fuck he's doing whenever he gets an opportunity to fuck a white woman. He's like, oh, I'm gonna make it where she ain't never gonna want to go back. I'm gonna eat it. I'm gonna toss the salad. He's like, I'm gonna do everything that Brad is not doing. You know what I mean? He's like, I ain't romancing the shit. I'm gonna give her fantasy. And that's what he's on because he's like, yo, these white boys done fucked up our money. You know what I mean? And he sees how they crash out online. Being all upset and whatnot. But when it comes to these, young white men, that's what they want. They what Nick Fuentes says to them, it resonates with them because the way that they look at right, we had 8 years of a quasi black president, that they grew up with, especially the real young white guys in the 20s. They're like, yo, everybody talking about racism and white supremacy. And I grew up seeing nothing but a black man as president of the United States, right? Like, because you got to remember like that timeline, like they don't have the timeline of, when white dudes were riding around with pickup trucks and hanging ropes out the window and shit like that. That's not in they don't have the historical context of that. They just have the historical context of wokeness and everything changing rapidly, not understanding that they're on the back end of, freaking hundreds of years of white male privilege. And they're like, well, why can't we get the privilege? Why do we have to suffer? Completely ignoring the fact that everybody else suffered underneath white male privilege. Right. And this goes to my point, the point that I made about, using these white women on OnlyFans and whatnot. At the end of the day, if white men don't have anything to offer anymore, right? Young white men don't even have anything to offer themselves. That's how much the white oligarchs are hoarding the wealth. They don't even have anything to offer themselves, let alone offer white women. So this is where the religion comes in. They want to say, oh, it's degeneracy and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, again, misdiagnosing the problem. You have nothing to offer. See, and that's the whole illusion of religion, because religion makes you think that religion in and of itself is effective. It's not effective by itself. Does it have influence? Does it have sway? Absolutely. Okay. But is it effective by itself without the money in the hands of young men? No, it is not. No, it is not. Again, black men already went through this. We already went through dealing with the system of white supremacy and what happens when you're the first to get fired and last to get hired, right? Or you're the one that's getting the lowest wages or the shittiest job. We already went through that. That's why our relationships are all fucked up right now. And young white men, they're like, oh, our birth rates are down. I'm like, I direct you to the conditions of a black community nearest you. We are the canaries in the coal mine. This is why I like to look at white people. I'm like, why are you so surprised at how fucked up the black community is? You did it. You did it. You created this situation. You set it up like this. All you have to do is take money out of the hands of young men. And I don't care what community is, that community is cooked. It's cooked. That's all you have to. You don't have to do shit else. All you got to do is make sure that the men don't have any money, or the men don't have enough money that it exceeds what the women have, and man, you'll fuck up the whole community. And that's exactly what's going on with young white men right now. But instead of talking about that and looking at the capitalism for what it is, they just say, oh, white fatigue, black fatigue. It's black fatigue. Y'all should have white fatigue. You should have white elite fatigue, white banker fatigue, white Fortune 500 fatigue, right? White politician fatigue, right? That's what you should have. But instead, you got black fatigue. Again, more punching down, punching at the weakest group, right? Right. I mean, you already killed black men's social status, right? So why does it have to do with black fatigue, right? But then they'll say, oh, it's because y'all kill us. You kill yourselves way more than black people have ever killed you. What are you talking about? I'd be scared as fuck if I was white. I can't even go to church without a motherfucker coming in there and spraying that bitch up. I can't even go to church. Again, with black people are not really worried about other black people, because with black people, the whole thing is what is our saying? You know what I'm saying? Don't start none, won't be none. That's black people saying. Black people already know, if somebody's trying to shoot, it's personal. If somebody's trying to shoot somebody else, that shit's personal. All we know is to get out of the fucking way. You know what I'm saying? All we know is to get out of the way. We see four guys hop out of a whip and one guy take off. We can stand there and watch because, we may back up a little bit, but we can stand there and watch because we know we know who the target is. You know what I'm saying? But a white dude hop out of a vehicle with a gun, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, man, he may be on some I'm going to take everybody with me type of shit. We don't really have I'm going to take everybody with me type black people in the black. I'm not saying it never happens, but we really don't have that. In the black community, again, it is either you fuck my bitch, you owe me money, or you disrespected me. It's one of them three things. And if somebody gets hit with a stray, we know that wasn't the intended target. You know what I mean? We know that if somebody's shooting at their ops and a 6-year-old girl is in the back seat and she gets hit, we know that the motherfucker didn't genuinely intend on killing a 6-year-old girl. We know that. Right? Because we don't engage in behavior like that. That's like cartel type of behavior. We don't engage in behavior like that. You know what I'm saying? It happens, if the, situations, but usually you'll see situations like, they went in, they broke in somebody's house and they killed somebody and the baby was still left in the crib or some shit like that. You'll see shit like that. You know what I mean? Because baby ain't got nothing to do with the shit. And on top of that, you don't get any points for that in the black community. Black community will severely frown on you for that shit. You'll get fucked up in prison for doing some shit like that. We don't co-sign that. Ops are ops. You focus on the ops. Black people, generally speaking, attack with precision. White people, you're fragile. I mean, that's just the reality of it. White people are fragile, in particularly white men. And when y'all don't get your way, everybody else has to suffer. You want to talk about lack of accountability? You went into a fucking church and shot up what did the children in the church have to do with why you mad at the world? What do they have to do with the shit? Okay, well, it's hilarious. You'll go in there and you'll kill, women and children of your own group, right? You'll kill them. They're over there doing the white thing in the white world and sitting in the white church, and you'll go up there and you'll kill them. But then you'll be mad because a white woman is dating a black guy where she's, safe or in a loving relationship or got mixed kids. But you'll go into a white church with a white mom and a white child and you'll kill them because reasons. like, like this shit don't make any sense. But then, again, white men are so focused on preserving the white race. If I was a white supremacist, I would be, I'll tell you what should happen. If you want to make the white supremacists and the Nazis look good, y'all should be standing out of churches and putting your little neo-Nazis outside of these churches, protecting them from these white boys that want to crash out. That's a good way to preserve white culture, but y'all ain't doing that because y'all on some other shit. Where are the Nazis standing outside of these churches with AR-15s to protect the precious white children in these religious Christian institutions? Where are y'all at? Where y'all at? Right? So again, like people, they claim that they're about certain things. They claim that they value certain things and that they protect certain things. But when you really look at it, your actions don't back up what you're saying. They don't back up what you're saying. So again, when it comes to these, young white men, I get the frustration. I'm not going to pretend like it comes out. I say, okay, what would the world look like to me if I was only 20 years old? What would the world look like to me? You know what I mean? It would look like a world where, there was a black guy for 8 years. Then Obama got in. And it was a whole bunch of woke shit. And it was a whole bunch of, white men bad. Right. And I'm like, damn, bitch, I'm not even in a position to oppress you. I haven't even gotten shit yet. I'm only 20. You know what I mean? Like I would feel that way if I was a young white man. I would sit there and be like, damn. And then you go out here and then, the freaking job market is trash. You're looking at the math. The house prices are out of fucking control. You know what I mean? You're like, I can't even be the oppressive white man that people say that I am because I don't even have the fucking resources to get my foot in the door. But then, you have women, they're online, they're putting you down constantly. Oh, you're dusty. You're an incel. You're just mad. You can't get a woman, whatever. And then I got to see the collage of a snow bunny heaven and black guys seemingly getting white women effortlessly because that's what the internet does. It'll take a very small minority of a situation and make it look like it's just happening everywhere. Right. Then I'll discover 4chan or I'll discover, some of the channels on Discord and shit. And I'll go over there and they'll be like, yeah, you see, the real problem is that the Jews, they want to turn us all into a mongrel race. And see, look, here's the whole history of Jews and the elders of Zion. And see how the Jews, they want to kill us. They want to eradicate us. And that's always been their conspiracy theory. Have you ever read the book, The Unseen Hand by Ralph? What is it? I think it's Ralph Emerson or something like that. Have you read that book? They'll be going through the whole thing. They'll pull out every Jewish conspiracy theory that they can fucking pull out. And again, while I'll sit there and be like, oh yeah, that's definitely some anti-Semitism, then they'll show these videos of these, white guys in Israel walking around and they got the hidden cameras and the shit, and the Jews are just saying this shit out loud. Yes, we own America. We run them. They're our bitch. Yes. They, we control this and control that. I'm like, well, damn. You know what I mean? So I'm like, is that anti-Semitism? Because this motherfucker's saying this shit openly out in the public, when they get real comfortable. Netanyahu's gotten caught, saying that shit. That America, is, turn the camera off. He tells the guy to turn the camera off. That motherfucker did not turn the camera off. And he's just up there talking about how much America's in his back pocket and everything. And that goes back to the whole Jeffrey Epstein and Mossad and them taking them to Little St. James and, compromising all the politicians by getting them to have sex with underage girls and recording it. And then threatening to put it out there if they don't vote to stay in support of Israel. It's not, that sort of honeypot situation. Like that's not beyond the scope of people saying, that sounds about accurate. And then the way that you see the shit, you got Cory Booker, freaking like fucking carrying some Jewish guy on his back, dancing around, these real embarrassing videos, freaking Jeffrey Epstein with the, Bill Clinton in a dress, fucking, freaking George W. Bush with the Jenga blocks, or the fucking, not Jenga blocks, but like the fucking blocks with the towers, to kind of suggest like 9/11, like we know something you don't know, you know what I mean, or we have something on you, type of shit. It's like, yeah, that's as far as I'll take the conspiracy theories. But the white supremacists. What I can't stand about all their Jewish conspiracy theories is they want to blame everything on the Jews before they blame it on their greedy grandfathers. I'm like, no. Bring the smoke to your greedy grandfathers first before you sit there and talk about what the Jews are doing. Bring the smoke to them first, and they won't do it. They won't do it. They'll sit there and they'll be like, oh, the Jews, and I'm like, well, I mean, technically speaking, I can understand from the Jewish perspective why the Jewish people, they got no love for you. You tried to put them in ovens and, throw in the Zyklon beads and shit like that. You tried to wipe them out as white Europeans with a shared white European culture. See, and that's the whole problem with, operating from the standpoint of one collective white European culture, because you got to own the bad with the good. You can't just sit there and then as soon as somebody calls you out and says, okay, well, the white European culture tried to eradicate the Jews, so they have every reason to hate your fucking guts. And then you turn around, oh, no, that was the Germans. Oh, now you want to break yourself. I'm actually Scottish and Welsh. Now you're Scottish and Welsh. But 5 minutes ago, it was European civilization. You see how they do that bullshit? As soon as you pointed out, I remember when Reindeer, the South African, I remember when he tried to pull that bullshit with me years ago. You know what I mean? I was like, he was like, and we gave the South Africans technology and locomotives and airplanes and televisions and the light bulb. And I was like, that's real funny, because you as South Africans, you didn't invent those inventions. Those are all made by white American Europeans, if you want to say that, we want to say that they're Europeans. White Americans made the light bulb and the fucking, the locomotive and the television, and the, what else, friggin' telegram and the telephone and all this other stuff. These were all innovations that were made in America, right? And the point that I made to him was, it's funny how when I bring up American slavery and you're a white South African, you say, oh, we have nothing to do with that. We have nothing to do with American slavery. Don't bring that American slavery to talk about what's going on in South Africa with South African apartheid and the whole, when Nelson Mandela, was in charge of the country, and how the white people felt that they were being, slighted. White people still own the vast majority of wealth in South Africa. They still run the gold mines and the diamond mines and all that. They still run all that shit. They still live in gated communities. They still, you can still see from a satellite that the black people are disproportionately poor in a majority black country, right? But what was funny is, again, he tried to dodge that. And then I'm like, oh, it's so interesting. So when it comes to slavery in America, you want to say you're a white South African, you have nothing to do with that. But then when it comes to the technological advancements, that you want to somehow magically claim that are American inventions, you want to then grab that and then bring it to South Africa and say that, look what the white South Africans gave to the black South Africans. We gave you all these North American inventions. I'm like, okay, so you're one collective of white people, or are you separate groups? Because it seems like when it comes to slavery, you don't want to accept that that's a part of your white history. But then when it comes to, the technology, the airplanes and locomotives and automobiles and shit, like, now you want to claim all that underneath the banner of whiteness. And this is what white people do when you call them out. There's many inconsistencies. And I'm loving the internet right now. Are y'all loving it? Because I'm loving it. I'm loving the way that all this shit is getting exposed. I'm loving how like shit can be pulled up in real time with AI. I mean, white supremacy is like, it's just crumbling. I mean, it's fucking falling apart and crumbling, which is why, they're trying to make this last ditch effort to, facilitate fascism and everything else. But again, The young white men's real problem, their real problem. And I know they love it because they all aspire to be rich and wealthy one day and have people beneath them. But their real problem is capitalism. Capitalism is their real problem. And the thing is that they'd rather, skip to fascism, and they're trying to find a way. How do we get back to white men exclusively having privilege? And it's fascism. Fascism is the fastest way to get there. Because correcting capitalism would be a situation where it's like rising tides lifts all boats. And they don't want to do that. You know what I mean? If you said universal basic income just for white people, they would probably agree to that. But if you said universal basic income to all Americans, right, which includes black people, which includes, Hispanic people, Indians and Asians, who have been here and are citizens, people who are born here, naturalized citizens and everything else, they're like, fuck that shit. Right? Because they're looking at their birth rates. The birth rate issue is a serious issue for them. Because again, they want to maintain power. They want to maintain their position. They want to maintain being the dominant group. They do not want to have a situation where other groups are able to come through and, change the temperature of the room. This is why they're obsessed with this whole cultural narrative and who's bringing, what culture. With black people, they'll say black culture is criminality, completely ignoring, the way that they've economically disenfranchised the black community. When it comes to other communities, when it comes to Muslims, they'll bring up, Muslim extremism. When it comes to the Indians, they'll bring up like how dirty they are and throwing poop all over the place. When it comes to the Arabs, actually that covers the Muslims. It's funny how they elevate the Japanese right now, right? Because the Japanese are a homogenous society, right? Before they were the Japs, you know what I mean? Before there was all this propaganda during World War II about, the Japanese and, how all these dehumanizing, you can go and just type in anti-Japanese World War II posters. Oh, they dehumanize the fuck out of them. But now, because they're a homogenous society, the white nationalists are taking inspiration from homogenous societies. And they're like, well, how come we can't have that? How come we can't have that? The Japanese were unsuccessful at taking over the world, right? Like Europeans were successful at doing that. And then Europeans, again, vacuumed all the resources and brought it back to Europe. And then again, created these narratives of the illusion of inclusion. That's why you have a problem. Again, what America is not what it's selling. White supremacy loves to sell meritocracy. They love to talk about it all the time. But think about a white nationalist saying that he wants to have a white ethno-state at the same time he's talking about meritocracy. You see how contradictory that is? You can't have a meritocracy and talk about a white ethno-state at the same time, because a white ethno-state puts ethnicity first. That's not a meritocracy. That is literally it's not even a corrective action. It's literally, maintaining the system of white supremacy. Like where like black people, you want to talk about affirmative action? Yeah, because black people are trying to correct all the long history in America where they were shut out purely on the basis of race. America has long since, when America was formerly in apartheid, that was basically a white ethno-state. Black people were, shunned to the outskirts of society. Black people were, restricted in their movement, right? And so, again, what white people really want is they want white privilege. They want white men in particular. They want white privilege. White women, they're a little bit more. Women in general tend to be more, with the whole concept of egalitarianism. The problem is what women don't understand is the reason why men don't go for it. Like this whole, we must topple systems of capitalism and we must topple and we must make shit equal is men are very uncertain about how or whether they can win in a system like that and how they'll be ranked when it comes to women being attracted to them. For example, like I just saw a post yesterday. It was sad. It was a sad post. I saw it on Instagram, and it was about how men under the height of, I think it was like 5'6", like how they have like the highest suicide rate, and the closer you get to 5 foot, your suicide rate is even higher. You know what I mean? And they had like the charts and all this other shit, and I'm sitting there looking. I'm like, damn, And again, that's a privilege that I've never, I've had the privilege of being tall my entire life. Sorry, got interrupted. I thought I was getting a delivery. I was like, first I was like, who the hell is that? But it wasn't for me. So anyway, but yeah, I think that's the biggest fear when it comes to men, because how are men ranked if there was an egalitarian society, right? Like women, like, and I wish I could get women to really understand this. Okay. You got the women saying, well, we make our own money, so we choose men on the basis of personality and having emotional intelligence and all that. And I'm like, I hear all that. And then this kind of opens the door for why some of these women will gravitate towards black men and are running away from white men who are trying to take all their rights away and shit. But, then you have, again, that I think there's still that issue with, if you take away white men's social status and the idea that women have a natural propensity to men who are more masculine, and black men are seen as more masculine, whether it's the NFL, sports, entertainment, whatever, and got black guys working out, and the idea that black guys are, just walk around. I don't know. Like, the white men are, on average, taller than black men. But for some reason, black men have this perception that all of us are 6 foot. I don't know where that comes from. Maybe because that's the black men that you see that get all the women. I don't know. Somebody was telling me that Legion of Men was crashing out because he saw Deion Sanders' son having to fucking train a white girl. White girls are like, it's ridiculous. The snow bunny shit is I don't know what it went. I don't know what has happened. You know what I mean? One dude, he called it the great shift. I don't know what has happened. I do not know what has happened. I do think a great deal of it has to do with white men and white women diverging politically, and also white men, aggressively trying to take their rights away. I definitely think that pushes these women away, and to experiment and explore and all this other type of shit. But what happens in a world where you take away, massive unequal distributions of wealth? What happens when you take that away? I still think you would have a quasi-capitalist system. I still think that you have to incentivize people to like really contribute to the society in a way, like the person that goes above and beyond. But then again, can that ever happen? Because the fact of the matter is that people in positions of power will always conspire to maintain that power. Even if you created a situation of just flat zero, it's like I have a classroom of students. All the A students, all they're going to do is like basically form a group, of the A students that are the smartest, and then they're going to, and essentially sociopaths, and they're going to come together and they're going to try to find a way to like oppress the rest of the class and, get what they want from the rest of the class. That's just how it works. Humanity does operate in hierarchies. But the thing is that what white people do is they make that shit racial. So white people at the top, everybody else, beneath them. Like white people at the top, I guess Asians are second, Asians and Indians are third, and then Hispanics and then blacks at the bottom. Like that, I'm pretty sure that's how they would set up their racial hierarchy type of situation. So if you eliminate capitalism, right, which or somehow reset the system, you would end up with a situation where white men wouldn't know where they stand. They wouldn't know what to leverage, the things that are important to them now, which primarily is the ability to offer, stability. Like, listening Nick Fuentes or Legion of Men or any of these other white men, they don't, you guys don't seem to know what to do if you can't offer stability. And don't get it twisted, black men very much feel the same way. Like, it's like, what do you do? But, there's a subculture has been created, out of poverty and whatnot. Obviously, most white men are not trying to operate and function like that. I guess the closest thing I could point to would maybe be like biker culture or outlaw biker culture, in the white community. But even still, they'll like try to find things that give them, some sort of, moral purpose, like whether they're ex-veterans or whether they're, they hate, pedophiles or some shit like that. They always, find something that they can morally stand on and justify, their position. But I don't know. I don't know what do men do when they no longer have that positive male identity to distinguish themselves, from other men. And again, it's not about, just the ideas that men have in their head. It's about what women react and respond to. Because there's a lot of shit that men do because women they respond to it. Like I had an argument with a feminist not too long ago, and I'm not trying to go into too much feminism conversation, but I'm like, if what you're suggesting is still going to lead a guy to be bitchless or sexless or whatever, fuck what you talking about. Fuck what you talking about. If women are not moved by what this man is doing, fuck your idealism. If women are not moved by it, you're not going to get men to subscribe to that. Because again, 50% of our existence on this planet is procreation. We're not just spiritual beings and balls of light just floating around looking for the most altruistic thing to do. No, that's not how human beings operate. You know what I mean? There's that aspect of, competition and getting your genes to move forward. But see, here's the thing, like, how does capitalism facilitate your genes moving forward? It only works if like women participate in the shit, right? The white elites basically make women the currency that they use to get men to be motivated to work for them in exchange for a fiat currency that the men then take that fiat currency and then, basically exchange it, with women for access to their wombs. Right? But what happens when, it's like the study with the monkey where you get the monkey, the fucking, you give them like a bolt, and the bolt, you get them to understand that the bolt equates to a currency for like grapes or some shit like that. And then after a while, the male monkeys start exchanging bolts with the female monkeys for access to sex. Like toot that thing up, chick. I don't want to fuck a grape, bitch. Fuck a grape. Give me that ass. And they start doing that shit, right? So I'm saying, how does the system work? Where 50% of people's existence is the desire to procreate, and men, exchange their time and energy and labor for access to resources so that they can say, hey, lady over there, I'm the most viable candidate. I have resources to provide for children, right? But the elites are hoarding the wealth. The whole thing breaks down. The whole thing, men cease to even want to be productive because they're like, yo, I'm not even making enough to be able to attract a female. Why the fuck am I doing it? And they start questioning themselves and all this other shit. And that's what's going on now, right? They start looking at it like, why the fuck am I doing this? What is being offered doesn't allow me to do anything. And that's when typically you get, revolutions and you get fucking elite heads on sticks. It's not going to be tolerated for very long. You can ride the wave, the ups and downs and shit, but it's not going to be tired. It's not going to be accepted for very long. This type of, inequality. It's not going to be tolerated. And I guess the elites now, like, we're at the point where they're like, well, we don't need any of you. We really don't need any of you. So it'll be like a group of 100 white elites on planet Earth, and they're just going to have robots doing everything for them. Right? Like, why the robots can't do everything for all of humanity and then all of humanity live comfortably and whatnot. And I do think that there'll be some adjustments because there's no other species that Every species has to go out there and get shit out of the mud. I don't care whether you're a fucking dolphin or a fucking seal or a lion or, a freaking gazelle. You got to butt your horns against another gazelle or a ram or some shit like that. They all got to compete. All of that. But how does reproduction work? And this is a question to women. This is a question to women because men's motivation around this largely is based off of how you react and respond to the shit. You know what I mean? Like if you, and this is what I think, the insecurity of white men when you take the resources away. You know what I mean? If you say, okay, well, you white guys no longer have resources anymore and you have nothing to offer. Well, we're going to go over here and sit on the dicks of the black guys that we really wanted to get with because we find them attractive. And I know you never knew that, but we're going to go sit on their cocks. Right? Like that's not going that's not going to work. White men are going to fight like hell to make sure that they have access to resources, or they're going to try to find some way to attack or eliminate or purge black men, from the equation, based on these perceptions. Even though the numbers are low, it doesn't matter. It's the perception. This is what makes the shit dangerous for black men. You know what I mean? You could have the majority of black men marrying black women, and white men are fixated on, the quarter of black men that are going over the fence, which only still represents significantly less than 1% of the white women that are actually marrying outside their race. Right? But it doesn't matter. Their perception is black men are a sexual threat. We must eliminate them. You see? So that's where it becomes dangerous for us. So we have to pay attention, stay strapped up, power tools, keep the blickies on you, all that shit. That's why. Because white men are going to go through all the motions of grief, as they're trying to figure out their place in the world now, that the white elites have basically taken all the wealth from them and hoarded it. And, again, as I've said before, I think most of them are cowards. Most of these young white men are out because they don't bring the smoke where the smoke needs to go. The only one that did that was Luigi Mangione. He's the only one that brought the smoke, to, an elite, right? And this is one of the reasons why the elites, they want to facilitate and, race war. Oh, yeah. That, again, who owns the fucking media? They do. That's why they want to push all that shit, push all those narratives, facilitate all that messaging. That's why they want to do that shit. Because they damn sure, oh, look at the niggas, don't look at me, as they walk out of the bank, with all of your money and all of your resources. People have no idea right now that the world is at an inflection point. When you really factor in the technology and shit, it's almost like that movie, The Creator. Because that'll be the next issue. Right? When you have, the robots and they become self-aware and then they have their own identity and they think of themselves as, individuals and whatnot. Do we give the robots their rights? Right? Like that'll be the next issue. Right? There'll be people protesting. We only hire humans. as though the robots are going to need your money. This was addressed in the movie The Creator. This was addressed in the movie The Matrix. Or I'd say The Animatrix more so. Because they got a whole scene in The Animatrix about that. About how the robots, how the war started. Which I find absolutely fascinating. But I'm saying, I don't know how humanity gets to any sort of real technological future and whatnot if it interferes and fucks with our ability to procreate, which currently it's doing. And the shifts. I mean, the shift already happened in the black community. The black men that are on the straight and narrow, because they were being discriminated in the workforce, they had significantly less to offer than the black men who were engaging in illegal activity. And be it the fact that they're, what white supremacy has done and black men not being able to provide for families, it shifted the culture. And so, you'll hear women talk about, I like me a street nigga. I like me a thug. I like me a man. Yeah, he out there in the streets. I feel safe. I feel protected. Oh, he's the ultimate form of masculinity. And the black women can deny and talk all the shit that they want to talk. But at the end of the day, all you got to do is just bring their baby daddies into court. And a lot of them are going to be embarrassed, by, who they got with. Because they weren't thinking the shit all the way out. But that's how women are. Like, women are like, I hate to say it, but they're like children. You gotta create the parameters. You gotta create the space, for them. They may not like all of it, but the outcome of that shit is much better than if you just let them go out there and they just go rogue and they start, choosing on the basis of feelings and shit like that. And I don't mean feelings like in terms of love. I just mean like just the irrational. If you ask a woman, are you attracted to the same type of men that you were attracted to when you were 20 as you are, when you're 30, they're going to tell you no. They're going to be more mature and they're going to be like thinking long term and, stability and shit that they need for the children and everything. They're going to start thinking about stuff like that. Women have phases. But, when you have all this feminist indoctrination and then, they believe, all this, that the evil patriarchy is oppressing them. And then, 10 years passes by. And then when they're 30, they're like, oh my God, I can't find anybody on my level. I want to date up. I want to date hypergamously. And then you're like, I thought you were fighting for equality and men were oppressive. And then you get into the whole thing where you find out that what women want is they want men to take on male responsibilities, patriarchal responsibilities, but without the, telling women what to do, which just makes men slaves at that point to women. Literally just slaves to women, which, that'll never happen because, again, men are the enforcement arm. Women have no power. If men don't enforce whatever policies are put in place, well, they just don't get enforced because they're not going to be enforced by women. So, and I do think that all of this plays into the white male paranoia because, white men are not just trying to be white supremacists. Like, just because if you take access to women and reproduction, if you take that out of the equation, you can't even continue white supremacy without making white babies. You can't even continue it. The truth of the matter is that it's never really been white supremacy. Maybe a little bit in the past. It's really been white elite supremacy. And the working class white men actually are a buffer class in and of themselves, and they don't really realize it. And this goes back to LBJ and his whole, if you make the poor white man think that he's better than the best black man, then, you can just keep digging in his pockets. That's a quote. He said that. The white elites recognize that the white proletariat that are poor and insecure, they need somebody to feel superior to. They know that shit. So they're like, okay, even though you don't have as much money as I do, okay, we'll give you a group to look down upon and make you think that you're preserving the white race and preserving white culture. We don't even understand as white elites why your genes need to go forward. Because you're inferior to us. And this is the way that it was in Europe and shit like that. Like, do you actually sat there and think that the kings and queens of Europe were sitting around thinking about the importance of the serfs, to procreate beyond how useful they were to them? They didn't give a fuck about that. The only thing that even facilitated there being rights for serfs and shit like the Magna Carta and all that stuff was like the bubonic plague. Was the fact that you didn't have enough workers because the plague killed, millions of Europeans and whatnot. And so when you only got so many workers, it's like, hey, motherfucker, you need to give us a better deal because you don't have, the massive numbers that you had to just get what, get the work that you want and drive down wages. You see?
Again, go look at Wat Tyler, the freaking the insurrection of Wat Tyler in 1381. Go look at that shit. There's been many insurrections of the peasant class, peasant revolts as they call them, in Europe. Look that shit up. That has nothing to do with white people. I mean, black people. That has nothing to do with minorities. That's internal shit. So, like, the part that pisses me off and the cowardice of white men is when y'all immediately go to some external force. Oh, it's the Jews. Oh, it's the blacks. Oh, it's the Muslims. Oh, it's the Latinos. You immediately go out of that when you have always historically had class warfare within white society. And instead of focusing on class warfare, you all focus on cultural war or race war and shit like that. And that's why, looking at it for what it is, I'm like, y'all ain't getting nowhere because you keep misdiagnosing the problem. You constantly misdiagnose the problem, and in part because you really don't want the system to change. What you want is the white elites to basically give you back your privilege. That's what you want. And I don't know whether y'all think that y'all going to get that or not. This is why the whole fascism. But the stupid thing is while you ran around screaming that everybody's against the white man bad. Oh, I'm like, yeah, but fascism is definitely going to have everybody hating you. And honestly, essentially, that damage has already been done. That damage is definitely, it's like what Trump has done, just pissed off all the countries around the world. And, that damage has already been done. Freaking China moved on. They buying their soybeans from Brazil. The farmers are, they're out there hurting. Trump is like, we'll give them the terror. Like, he don't even know what he's talking about. It doesn't work like that. So all the other countries, they just pivoted. They adjusted. The idea that you're going to bully people into compliance, like that's not going to happen. What are you going to do? Start wars with the entire world? You're going to be like Israel if you don't get your way? You know what I mean? Like, that's not going to go over very well. The bottom line is the European economy is struggling because the European economy was never self-sufficient. It was predicated off of the exploitation of the global South. And now that the global South has regained control and they've, caught up in many regards, the most advanced country in the world is not any country in Europe. It's not the United States. It's actually fucking China. China is the most advanced country in the world. Maybe I'll throw up, Japan. You know what I mean? But China is definitely, I mean, the way that they do their projects, they play long football. They plan shit out. They got 100-year plans. The United States is just, till the end of next week, till the next pay period. And that's why, the situation is as such. I mean, it's funny listening to Legion of Men talk about superior white culture, how the white culture is so superior. I'm like, you can't even create a system that keeps your birth rates up. And yet you run around talking about your superior culture. Your culture is predicated off of the rape, pillage, and plunder of non-white peoples. And then combined with the fact that even with the whole world's resources at your disposal, I'll give you the fact that you all came up with things and technological advancements. You should, given that you had the whole world's wealth and resources at your disposal. Anybody in that position should be able to put their minds together and do research and everything, because you basically have an infinite supply of fucking resources and wealth, and where you can just do big projects like the Manhattan Project and shit like that. Yeah, you better be number one in terms of research and development and whatnot. But white people, they didn't do that shit in a vacuum as much as they like to think that they did. They didn't. And so now that the rest of the world is caught up, they no longer have those countries to exploit. So now they're going back to the position from whence they came, which is, a system where, they don't have the social safety nets that they once had. They aren't able to maintain the quality of life that was predicated off of the exploitation of the global South and non-white peoples. They don't have that anymore. So they're freaking out and they're blaming everybody else. Oh, get the Muslims out of here. Oh, get the Africans out of here. Oh, get the blacks out of here. I'm like, you do realize that those people are there from your former colonies or the former colonies of your neighboring countries. Like, you do realize that, right? That's why they're there, right? Because you went into their territory and poked the bear. You went into their territory, and came up with your brilliant idea of colonization. And now you're in essentially I'd argue a post-neo-colonial environment. Because again, information is flying, but why like, it's like you fool me once, shame on me, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, right? And I feel like that's kind of where the world is at now, where it's like see, you already played your card. See, when you go out there and you rape, pillage, and plunder and you do everything, see, now people know not to trust you. Okay, they know who you are. They know your impulsive nature. As the black Israelites like to come on my page, yeah, that's Esau. That's Esau. Yeah, that's Esau, brother. That's Esau. They love to come on my page talking that shit. Yeah. Yeah, now that everybody knows who the fuck you actually are, yeah, you're gonna have a problem going around and, getting people to trust you and make deals with you in good faith. Like and then and the truth is that Donald Trump is the avatar of that. He is the avatar of a person, with that represents the ultimate person with narcissistic personality disorder. And unless white people are just going to go out here, what are you going to do? Start World War III? You're gonna go pick fights with the entire world so that you can go back to a situation where everybody else is living in third world conditions, where Europe is, and North America are the wealthiest nations in the world, and you say we the best, right? And I'm saying this as a person who lives in North America. I want prosperity for America, but I'm like, why does it have to be at the expense of everybody else? Why can't it just be like internal innovation and shit? Again, it reminds me of Tim Cook in the whole situation with Apple, where Apple is constantly being accused of not innovating because they don't want to make the investment. They don't want to put the money, into making new microchips. They're like, oh, no, just use the chips that you have. And they're coming out with the iPhone, 15, 16, 17, and they're basically essentially all the same, right? They don't have, there's nothing, freaking, Apple has not innovated since Steve Jobs died, which is why their stocks went down. Because again, capitalism, shareholder primacy, we must keep the shareholders happy. We must buy our stocks back to make the price of the stocks, go up, because that's all that matters. This is end stage capitalism. That's what this is. This is end stage fucking capitalism. Now, what comes after that? Is it a resource-based economy? I don't know. But seriously speaking, the white nationalists, they're really stuck in the past. They're really, really stuck in the past. And they want a world where they don't have any competition. They want a world where they, as a white man, can go to any place in the world, and the person, like C.K. Lewis joked, he was like, "Oh yes, here, sir, here's a table for you." Right? That's what they want. They want everybody else in the world to be self-hating and look up to white people like they're gods, and look to service white people, and then you have these seriously mediocre white men who think that they're awesome just based off of their whiteness or the legacy of a previous generation of white men, by separating out all of the evil acts and the barbarism and crimes against humanity that they did in order to, create this false narrative that that the white people of the past were just these, these explorers. Like they went out there and explored the stars and just discovered shit and brought civilization to the rest of the world. I mean, it's crazy for the group of people who come from, what was in antiquity the backwaters of the world, where there are no megalithic structures, the backwaters of the world, to claim, themselves to be, the harbingers of civilization. Like that, like it's just so ironic at how the world got flipped on its head, right? Yeah, that's why they want to keep the library at the Vatican locked up. Yeah, I'm sure they got lots of secrets in there, and I think it in part contributes to why there's so much anti-blackness. The contempt, the hatred, for us. They fear us. They fear us. I used to hate when you have some hotep stand on a street corner and say that, and he's he doesn't have a job and he's just dusty, and he got his patchy beard and shit like that, and he just out there like, nigga, comb your beard. You know what I'm saying? He just out there screaming, reading scriptures, some shit like that, like some black Israelites do in they Power Ranger suits and stuff. You know what I mean? I used to hate when they say that, because I'm like, I'm based on what, motherfucker? But like, you see it. Like there's too much insecurity. There's too much living rent free in their head. There's too much fear, you see, of black people. I mean, look at this shit with like fucking, Burkina Faso and whatnot. You know what I mean? Like the white people will sit there, oh, you black people, why don't you go fix Africa and everything? Look at Africa. Africa's fucked up. Here you have a man that's taking control of his own country and his own land and his own minerals and whatnot. And guess what? That's going to negatively affect, France. That's going to negatively affect white people. See, that's the reality. See, black people being independent and self-sufficient, they don't really mean that. They don't really want that. You know what I mean? What they want is they just want you to basically victim blame yourself. You see, that's the game. We get you to victim blame yourself. Oh, so it's because you're not handling your own business, blah, 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 blah. Then as soon as you do, and you're empowering yourself, you're right. You think that they would cheer you on, right? Because they were the ones talking about you need to go and fix your own shit. Then when you fix your own shit, now they're bitching because they can't exploit you anymore. Now they're crying. Now they're bitching. Now they're trying to scramble and try to find some, you kicked out all the French people of your country. Oh, this is reverse racism. Now they want to sit there and claim that you got kicked out because you were a white man, not that you got kicked out because you're subversive and you're undermining their country. You see what I'm saying? Man, these people are pathological, bro. They're so pathological, it's not even funny. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is like, the world could be such a better place if white people weren't such dicks. Like if white people, like, imagine if they left Europe and they went around the world and they actually like interacted and exchanged with people in some sort of amicable way. You know what I mean? And there was some real reciprocity, like, hey, we can help you with this. Oh, we can help you with this. Oh, well, hey, we're friends, and then everybody's like developing and building up. But no, that's not what white people did. White people went out into the world like a fucking parasite, like a fucking plague unto other people, and causing massive amounts of fucking genocide. That's what white people did. And I'm sure, people say, oh, what about Genghis Khan? That's like the new thing that white people go to. They're like, Genghis Khan did the same. Yeah, and Genghis Khan was just as fucked up. He was just as fucked up. But you would think if you recognize that was terrible, what the fuck are y'all doing? So it's just, it's like I don't see, they want to say, oh, we're going to make it fascist and all this other shit. If there is a World War II, it's going to be literally the whole rest of the world against white people, in my opinion. That's what it's going to be. And again, you have other groups of people that also have nukes. I know white people have the most nukes, but like you're just talking about global mutual annihilation. Which could possibly be why, the freaking, the ancient world and all these megalithic structures are around the world, or just, nobody knows who built them or how or why or whatever. It could be you know, that has already happened to humanity in the past, right? That would be a hell of a movie, right? You show ancient civilizations and they have a nuclear war amongst each other and freaking destroy everything, and then, freaking humanity gets thrown back into, prehistoric times and then has to develop all over again, right? But I mean, like I look at the shit and I'm just like, nah, all of this is rooted in the fact that the white elites are not sharing the wealth with the white proletariat. They're not sharing the wealth with young white men, and as a result of not sharing the wealth with young white men are frustrated, and they're looking for a positive male identity. And if that means white nationalism, if that means joining the neo-Nazi group, if that means becoming a white nationalist and buying into all these made-up narratives about how awesome white people are, then that's what they're going to do, because nothing else is being offered. Men, if they don't, bottom line, if men lose access to women and children, man, they lose their shit. They will fucking cannibalize, the environment. Amos Wilson said this about the black community. If you have young men and they are unemployed or underemployed, and you just leave them there and you try to give them manhood training in a vacuum and tell them about what type of men they should be and what type of men that they should aspire to, but you don't give them the means, to get there, they will cannibalize the community. They will cannibalize the society. And that's what white people are dealing with right now. In the black community, it manifests differently, because you have the black on black violence, the gang violence, inner city violence, right? That's what happens when you don't have economic opportunities for black men. Black men don't crash out and start killing their own. They, just like in mass shootings, it's just the internal beef within the narco economy, right? And personal beefs and gang shit and you killed my brother and everything else like that. It turns into some Hatfield and McCoy's type of shit, right? But in the white community, it manifests differently. In the white community, they start shooting up churches and shooting up malls and shooting up fucking, concerts and shit like that. That's what happens, when white men cannibalize the community. When they can't make it. I mean, I looked up the numbers, with the, it was like 45% of the mass shooters were either unemployed at the time or had like some like economic hardship. And then there was another factor in there. I'm trying to think what it was. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see. Mass shooters. Let me see if I had a mass shooters, political assassination. No, I don't know if it's on here. Yeah, a study titled "The Economics of Mass Shootings" looked at U.S. mass shootings from 2000 and 2015. It found 45% of shooters were unemployed or out of the labor force at the moment of the shooting. The same study reports that 40% of shooters showed signs of financial distress, which includes being unable to meet financial obligations, being in debt, or markers of economic hardship. In a study of active shooters incidents in the United States between 2000 and 2013, FBI report, one sees various demographic factors of shooters, unemployment status, past history, etc., but the report does not break out shooters by income thresholds like $80,000. I was asking because I think $80,000 is a nice, comfortable place to start. Get you a decent apartment, get you, you got your nice little car. You could have a girlfriend and be in a relationship. For a single guy, I think $80,000 it's a good place to start. You can work with $80,000. You got a little, if you don't have a bunch of debt, you got some disposable income. You can enjoy yourself. But if you don't Anything below that, nah, it's not the 1960s anymore. You can't go and get you what was in 1985? I think in 1985 you could rent an apartment for $450. Imagine that. $450 for an apartment. And mind you, the same building, the same apartment that somebody rented in 1985 for $450 is probably now upwards of $2,000 or more. Like you're not getting anything more than that guy got in 1985. You can, and again, when you look at, people will say, well, you made less money in 1985, but the rent was still a smaller proportion of your overall income. Again, we live in and I think, what did I say? Necrotocracy. No, yeah. Somebody said a geriatrictocracy or something like gerontocracy. No, I'm putting an N in there and I don't need to. But that is the government. That is the society that we live in. We live in a society that is ruled by the old. And I imagine that in Rome, that's also what facilitated the toppling, of Rome, when you get these old white men that love to go and send young men off to war to die, and young men, when they realize what's really going on and they look at their brothers that have fallen in battle and shit like that. Yes. Yeah, they're gonna come back and they're gonna look at the shit a lot differently, and they're gonna be like, yeah, you motherfucker, while you sit over here eating grapes and being fanned by a fern. You know what I mean? Like, that's literally where this is. And I can't understand for the life of me why you so-called white nationalists. I don't understand why y'all don't bring the smoke to the people who are in positions of power who look like you. I really think it's because you think that one day you aspire to be in that type of position. And then what? Do unto your kids as they've done unto you. This again, the white race, I don't know what's going on with y'all, but the fact that you don't put your children first, you want to talk about the future and all this other shit, and you don't put your children first. You know what I'm saying? You don't care about their well-being, right? I have a hard time buying into the, the 14 letters and all this other. I have a hard time buying into that because you haven't secured, a future for, the white race. Because every time some white people get into positions of power, they're only narrowly focused on themselves. And they create systems that literally cannibalize themselves. Going back to, the Ouroboros flag, that I made with the Ouroboros, the snake consuming itself with the eggs in the middle and being crushed. Right? I mean, that flag is 100% representative of what white culture really is. It is a parasitic, cannibalistic culture. You know what I'm saying? Again, Legion of Men will sit there and be like, "Oh, it's so beautiful, and it just this like society of beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed women that are we're just open to me having sexual access to them." Like this is what he thinks of. It's like he thinks he's the little boy in the movie Last Action Hero. Remember that with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he was walking around and all the women were beautiful, and he was trying to use that as a marker to denote why they're in a movie and it's not really real. He's like, look around. He's like, they're all beautiful. He's like, this isn't real. And I swear that's how these white guys, that's how they think. And again, a lot of this stuff, all the rhetoric, is one thing I've recognized about, I could say just white men, but I definitely say this is definitely done in the black community as well. I say all men do this bullshit. Where they have their own agenda. It's like when Umar Johnson was up there and he was talking about, what we need to do is we need to take on more than one woman and da-da-da-da-da. It's like, okay, I can see the realism of that, right? If we have this imbalance between mothers and fathers that already exist in the black community, and if we have more women than men, then some of the men should take on more than one woman, right? But underneath the umbrella of marriage, right? But the reality is like there's a lot of guys, they just want to fuck more than one woman. They just want to have a harem of women. It has nothing to do with building nations or any of that other shit. They just want more access to pussy. You see, and there's a lot of white guys that they want more access to pussy. Just like, again, you catch these white nationalists and they think that they're just making jokes, but when they're up there talking about big booty Latinas, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, do you really care about the white race? Oh, yes, we need to get them out because we need to preserve the white race. But if the big booty Latinas, if they get with some incels, the big booty Latinas can stay. Yes, I want a big booty Latina. They could stay. Well, you do realize that, those women are primarily indigenous, have indigenous ancestry, and if you got with one of the big booty Latinas, either that or hell, they're the epitome. I mean, Latinos in and of themselves are the epitome of the so-called mongrels that the white nationalists want to say that the Jews are trying to get them to be, right? Because you got freaking. Anybody who's Latina, that's whether in the Caribbean or Mexico or Latin America, they typically tend to be, part Amerindian, African, and European from the Spaniards, right? I mean, that's pretty much what makes them, who and what they are. And that's always the funny part, because then the white guys will be like, yeah, I'm going to Colombia. I'm going, all these Latinas, they're so beautiful. If you ask somebody what countries have the most beautiful women in the world, they're typically gonna say Scandinavia, Colombia, and Brazil. Those are gonna be somewhere in the fucking top 3. They're always gonna throw those up there. And I'm like, well, two of those countries right there are full of so-called mongrels. So what the fuck are you doing over there? You see what I'm saying? And then again, same thing with white dudes. Where do white dudes go when they're 50 plus and they want to go out there? Where and they want to have sex or get married late or whatever. Where do they go? They go to Thailand. They go to Bangkok. They go to the Philippines looking for a wife and shit like that. So a lot of this stuff they talk about, preserving the white race. But again, when you look at some of these white men's actions, I'm like, y'all motherfuckers just want access to pussy and a womb. That's the real deal. But you can't get that underneath any context if you're fucking broke. If you're broke, you can't get access to women, period, of any particular race. And that's why, all this stuff about degeneracy and, we got to get rid of porn. Motherfucker, if you get rid of the porn, do you know how many of these white dudes will pay? Even fucking, what's his name? Undead Chronic pointed that out with his Dave Ramsey video. He pointed that shit out. You know what I mean? Where Dave Ramsey was like, what you need to do is you need to take the 25-year-olds and you need to kick them out on the street and tell them to get some grit in their stomach. Right? And he said that, and fucking Undead Chronic lashed out. He was like, okay, boomer. You know what I'm saying? Do you know what's going to happen? Do you know what's going to happen if you put these young men out there on their ass with nothing to lose? He's like, but boomer, I'm trying to save your life, boomer. You know what I mean? I love that video. I love Undead Chronic is another dick. He's like fucking Legion of Men with his Latino white supremacist bullshit. But I do passionately love that video. I love that video. And I love the videos where white men or white adjacent men, they take the smoke to where the smoke belongs. I love that. Instead of sitting around talking about black fatigue as though addressing the inner city crime in Chicago is suddenly going to make, the fucking rent drop down from $2,000, in fucking Florida or some shit like that. It ain't got nothing to do with that. You can black fatigue all you want until your eyes water. That's still not going to bring houses, the property values down from $400,000 for the average home. That's still not going to make the government kick off some, initiative like they did in 1947 to build more houses to bring the prices of homes underneath control. That's still not gonna make them. You can black fatigue all you want. Still not gonna make them push laws that limit BlackRock from purchasing or any private equity firm from purchasing, homes that could otherwise be used for you to, raise your Judeo-Christian white nationalist family in. You know what I mean? Y'all motherfuckers stay wasting time every day. How many videos has Legion of Men made about black fatigue? How many videos has this motherfucker made? Talking about this. I like what Professor Black Truth said, sitting there bitching about this schizophrenic black man on a train who should have been institutionalized, but you defunded all the mental health care over the past 60 years. Again, we don't want to pay for anything society. But I like what Professor Black Truth said, when he was like, yeah, but you ain't saying nothing about the fucking the white men in Moscow that are killing Ukrainian women on a fucking regular basis. You know what I mean? 1, 2, 3, 4, boom. A Ukrainian woman's life was just stuffed out by a Russian. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, there goes another Ukrainian woman's life snuffed out by a Russian. Yeah, again, there's white on white violence. You know what I mean? But you don't hear them crashing out about that. You don't hear them, the Russians can't live amongst us. Oh my God. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm saying, he's right over there in the Balkans. He lives, where does he live? Where's he at? Romania? Wasn't Romania one of the nations that was behind the Iron Curtain? Like, fuck is this motherfucker talking about? Russia could roll its tanks right into fucking Romania and take that bitch over again, and throw a hammer and sickle on the top of the Capitol building and then order all the children in the school to speak Russian. You know what I'm saying? They've been dominating over there. So, it's all this selective outrage. It gets old. And the thing is I expect people to because I think most people start there. I think there's something with the amygdala and fear of other groups that kind of permeates, in particularly the white culture. But I'm saying once you get to you've lived long enough, you've been on this planet long enough, you should be able to use your critical thinking skills to get past the propaganda, get past the, people trying to goad you and egg you on with oh, well, look at the blacks. Motherfucker. Yeah, we do that shit too. You know what I mean? What about black crime? Yeah, well, what about white guys, committing sexual assaults against minors and whatnot? What about that shit? The amount, it was so crazy is the amount of white guys that I know that want to start, I know a guy that he's got a nonprofit and everything. And he was talking to me about starting, one of these To Catch a Predator type of programs and whatnot. Cause he's got this serious beef with, these child predators and whatnot. And I'm just kind of what is that, man? Y'all are the biggest perpetrators of it, but seriously speaking, what is that? Why is it you only see injustice when it comes to that? You know what I mean? It's kind of the same thing with white people and dogs. You know what I mean? Where you if they see white people will gravitate more towards a dog being abused than, let's say, a black person being abused. They value dogs more than they value black people. And again, there's pathological behavior. You got to recognize, who or what you're dealing with. Meanwhile, despite running around saying all the terrible things that they say about black people, you got white women running around talking about, if you're a lost white child, go find you a black person and you'll be safe. You see what I'm saying? You see the twisted logic that these people got twisted. So, I mean, I know this video is really, really long. I ain't even intended to be this long, but it's just I'm having one of those streams of consciousness where, I'm just looking at it for what it is, looking at the root of their insecurity, sexual insecurity, the insecurity about not being able to set the temperature and the pace in the room, and them always wanting to call the shots and what they fear. I think even some of it has to do with a fear of retaliation, because if they look at it white people went around the world and they fucked everybody fucking up. They did. They went around the world and forced themselves on other people. And I guess they assume that if anybody else gets in power, that, as C.K. Lewis said, they're going to hold us down and fuck us in the ass, for eternity. But until then, whee! That was like one of the funniest skits. But what did he get jammed up? What did C.K. Lewis get jammed up for? And when some type of sexual harassment, or he pulled his dick out or something. He was yeah, suck it, bitch. You know what I mean? What did he do? Wasn't this something sexual? You know what I mean? He was trying to holler at a bitch or some shit. I don't know what happened. And I think he got in. I just remember he got in trouble over something. Hold on, let me. Don't you hate when I ask questions and I got the internet right in front of me? What did C.K. Lewis get? C.K. Lewis get in trouble for? What did C.K. Lewis get in trouble for? Let's see. In November 2017, the New York Times published allegations by 5 women. Oh, no, I said C.K. Lewis. Damn, talk about a dyslexic moment. Louis C.K. had engaged in sexual misconduct over a period of years. The allegations included incidents in which he masturbated in front of a woman without their consent or asked women to watch him masturbate in situations where there was a power imbalance in his hotel room following a comedy. Yeah, so he's into that cuckold shit. He's into that I don't want to make a leap of logic, but listening to that, I'm like, yeah, you're the type that would probably, want some black dude to bang your wife in front of you and then her tell you how good it feels and how yours is so little and you could never satisfy her. Again, go over there on fucking imagefap.com or what's another one? What's another website that people go to see those? ImageFap is probably the best one. And just type in cuckold and just go ahead and you'll see. White guys, they're wearing their wives' panties. They're in heels. They got their wives' panties on their head. You know what I mean? They're in the corner sitting in a chair, with a tie like in their mouth, like fucking like it's they're being muzzled or something like that, and like sitting in the corner. You know what I mean? Fondling themselves while their wife is getting banged. It's all there. And this shit's been going on for a while because you could tell by the Polaroid quality of the images. These motherfuckers have been on that shit. And with them, it's probably because like they get sexually gratified at not being in a position of power because white men are in a position of power because black men ain't gonna let you do no shit like that. Black men are used to being disrespected all the fucking time. So black men, want to be in a position of power in terms of, their sexual relationships. Being put down or something like that is not something that many black men fantasize. Most certainly not to the extent that white men do. I know that there's men that are into like the dominatrix shit, but I don't hear that as a fantasy coming from black men. Usually black men want to dominate. And, that may go into or play into, some of the black men getting with some of these non-black women who are more inclined to, operate from a submissive standpoint versus black women. I know y'all sisters don't want to hear that, but I'm just saying, when it comes to these like sort of sexual fantasies that men have, if you can't fulfill the sexual fantasy, the man is not going to choose you. So, where's this at? One example, 2 women. What is this? Dana Min Goodman. He invited them to his hotel room under the pretense of casual conversation, then asked if he could masturbate in front of them. They believed it was a joke. So that's his thing. He likes to like watch me rub one out. Or other allegations involve phone calls on a set context where he allegedly engaged in sexual behavior, masturbate. He just wants to walk around with a trench coat and just rock himself off and shit. CK responded by issuing a public statement admitting the stories were true. So he took ownership of it, acknowledging that he abused the power dynamic inherent in his status. His film, I Love You, Daddy, had its release and it was canceled. Yeah, so he got himself jammed up being a sexual deviant and whatnot. So yeah, white man, y'all got an issue with that type of shit. Y'all be doing some goofy shit and again, the fall is much greater when it comes to white men doing this type of shit because again, like legitimate, we have the best culture. We the best. We the best. Yeah, when you running around talking about you the best and everything, yeah, you can't do shit like that. I was just having a conversation with somebody about that shit about, why white guys get caught up with the CP on the internet and everything because it's an internet crime. And not only that, it's a federal crime. You know what I mean? So they get caught up on that way more than black men do. Because one, you got to have access to the internet, and and white men, maybe they are in a better socioeconomic position. So they're not gonna like, put themselves out there, even though they're the ones that are showing up. Because I guess you got to meet them on the internet forum, and then you go and go to the whatever the place is, and then Chris Hansen jumps out of the closet. Hey John, have a seat. You know what I mean? Like he jumps out the closet and shit. But like it does go on in the black community, but it goes on like in situations where let's say you got a single black mother, she's working third shift, and then, the girl comes back home after school and she's, 13 or something like that. And you got a guy in the neighborhood, he's older, she's looking at him, he's looking at her, and then he goes up and, totally manipulates the situation. He spits his adult game to a child, and then she's just so smitten. And the next thing he's smashing. And that is, that's a sexual crime. Right. But in the white community, y'all be on the internet way, way more. Y'all be gathering files after files after files. Y'all go out there and you just grab massive amounts of files, in order to do the things that you do, and y'all get caught because the feds is looking at that shit. So it's not that it doesn't go on in the black community, but some people say it's underreported. Other people, it's a totally different set of dynamics. And then again, majority of the white guys are getting caught for actual, internet crimes. They're not getting caught for, and I think that needs to be separated, like the sexual acts versus, having CP paraphernalia. That's different. So I don't know. I'm just giving the facts about what it actually is, because, people want to run on the internet and they want to run around, saying a bunch of things that, are exaggerated or away from the truth, or just echo things that they heard from somebody else, but they never actually took the time to go and actually listen to it. But anyway, I can hear my voice fading because I've been talking for almost 2 hours. So let me end this video. That's my video, SWP out. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe.
On the scene, diamond blingy, whole screen, checkerboard, Louis V. I'm so fresh and so clean. Stuff them bands in my jeans, slap them 30s in them things. Pull a trigger, let it sing. Then go smoke a Russian cream.
Boo, hold on.
Yeah.
Hello?
We ain't.
Where we at? Oh, you want to know where I'm at? We outside!